to all our listeners out there, and welcome to another edition of the Modern Farming Podcast, brought to you by Green Gene Foundation, where we are cultivating agricultural excellence through education.
We're your hosts, Chris and Tara, and together we're growing knowledge about the world that feeds us.
Hi, Tara. Today we have some guests that are involved in the academic area of learning and teaching. They are co-founders of the online Gemstone Academy. Please welcome Jeff and Michael Drew. So for the listeners out there that aren't totally aware, can you give us a little background of yourselves and a little bit of background on the Gemstone Academy and what it does and what it stands for?
Definitely. First, thanks for having us on here. I'm Jeff Drew. I'm one of the co-founders at the Gemstone Academy. I'm currently based in Gainesville, Florida. So I went to UF, just graduated, go Gators. And currently I work in AI in the legal field. So I'm an AI tech consultant. But one of the main purposes that I had tried to achieve with Gemstone Academy was to help kids along that programming journey, right? That coding journey, where when we started to learn to code, we had to learn a lot of syntax, a lot of grammar, just to get the code to run. And so it was less of a focus on what we wanted to achieve, a lot more of a focus on like the technical side of things. So a lot of stumbling along the way. And we wanted to help kids get past that stage faster so that they could build their ideas a lot quicker when they were still creative.
Pleasure to be here. I'm Michael Drew, and I'm also a co-founder of Gemstone. Coincidentally, as he's leaving UF, I'm actually entering into UF. So I'm a rising freshman. So again, go Gators, and it's a pleasure to be in Gainesville. So my interaction with Gemstone sort of arose out of the same concept where I'm stumbling a lot as a coder in syntax, in the most basic aspect of what it means to code. So I know the ideas I want to bring into reality, and I know the final goal and the logic that I need. I just don't know how to exactly say that to a computer. So I think a lot of the searching, debugging process, yes, it does require you to already know the logic, but it also shouldn't be limited based off of the most simple syntactical grammar aspect. So Gemstone, of course, goes way beyond just bypassing syntax, but there's definitely, I think, a very large emphasis on how we can use AI to get to what's really important to learn.
Well, briefly, I'll add on that. So Michael actually started programming probably before I did. So this is a lot of years back. So he was definitely integral in, starting to design the curriculum before AI was really a thing, and then helping us pivot into, hey, we started to learn to code this one way, but AI actually dictates that you should probably learn it this way. It's faster, and you can get your ideas much cleaner, right? Much more compact. And so that's kind of what he's been on board for. It's been awesome.
And you had another person that was in when you were founding this organization. Can you tell us a little bit about him and how you met?
Definitely. So Jax, he's a third co-founder of ours. He was a classmate of mine back in high school. So one of our mentors, he was our computer science teacher, APCSA. Michael, I think you had him as well, right, Mr. Asholi?
Yes, we all shared a common computer science teacher.
Back then, our first programming assignment was to write, I think it was like to add the numbers in the list, right? Write the code by hand on paper with a pencil, which is, now that we think about it, we barely even type our code anymore. We just talk to a computer and it writes it for us. And so it's changed a lot in just a couple of years. And the application there with Jax was, he knew how to code very well. He knew his journey. He probably started when he was 7 or 8 programming. And it was very much, hey, I have to look up online whether or not the semicolon goes here. Or do I have to use 2 plus signs or 1 plus sign? Or 3 equal signs or 2 equal signs? And if it was wrong, your code wouldn't run, right? And so you just couldn't get anything done. So the idea that Jackson and I had was, really the foundation of Gemstone here. We wanted to help kids avoid those, like Michael said, right, the stumbling, just to go straight into, I have this idea. I'm really creative and I really want to deliver this thing. All right, how can I put that onto paper and make it work? And that's kind of how Jackson and I got started.
So I'm an electrical engineer. I have a computer science background.
Oh, I love it.
Minor, but I learned my computer science way back in the 90s.
Okay. Chris, what were your languages back then? I've heard people throw Pascal, COBOL around.
I learned Pascal and
okay.
Pascal and C. We were out of the Fortran in the 90s. That was
nice. Nice.
was an old that was spaghetti code. We moved on from that, but and I enjoyed it. I'm not a huge software guy. I'm more of a hardware guy these days. But I had a lot of friends being in computer science classes that stumbled exactly where you said. They just didn't get it right. It's like learning Spanish when you only have known English, and they gave up, right? Because they were sick and tired of trying to figure out where one character screwed up their entire program.
Right.
And they lost it. They went off and did teaching, or they did, whatever. So I get where you guys are coming from personally. And I think it's great that you've come up with a way that can help. Now, I guess that's my next question. Gemstone Academy, is this for kids that are in like junior, senior high, or is this for kids that are, getting into college? Where do you focus your curriculum towards?
So I guess at face value, it seems like the skills that kids learn here, right? Not only to build something, but also to ship it and to sell it, should be geared towards older kids. And maybe it's more beneficial for kids who are, later on in high school, entering college. But really, this is something interesting we found over the last couple of years, that the younger kids, right? So 8, 9, 10 years old, they tend to be more, if we get technical, like neuroplastic, right? More creative. They can take the things that they have, the problems that they have, and they come up with crazy solutions to solve them. And then when you enable them, right, when you remove that, really the syntax ramp of them having to learn the code, learn how to write it, and you just give them the tool that lets them take a problem and take their solution and build that solution, they're able to perform just as well as those high schoolers or those college level students. And so, yeah, our age range on paper is 8 to 18, but we found that kids early middle school, you teach them how to problem solve, how to apply that logic that they have into building a product, delivering that product, and selling themselves, selling that solution. They're able to deliver very, very well, way above their age range.
This is something that we met at a homeschool conference. So
Yes.
You were there telling your homeschool parents that this is programming that they can purchase to do extracurricular, or are they using this just to learn to do coding, or are they applying this to other studies?
I'll take this briefly. And Michael has, I guess, a very personal relationship with this. But extracurricular, again, at face value, right? At surface value, it's something to add on to curriculum. I might be biased. Chris, you might be biased because we're technical. I think coding and this application of logic should be integral in education, period, right? Just as people should learn, how to do their taxes or how to manage personal finance, they should learn how to code. They should learn how to deliver things and solve problems with software, or maybe hardware. But I think software is pretty important. What we really want to go after at Gemstone is to, package the important skills in life. So whether it's automating things, whether it's building things that are more sustainable for the future, for nature, for the environment, and putting that into something that a kid is able to understand and that a kid is able to relate to. So they don't have to spend 4 years in undergrad learning how to code so that they can start interacting with that world around them. So I guess, Tara, to directly answer your question, kind of extracurricular. But really our hope is to make it much more integral.
So continuing on that train of thought, when you learn to code, of course, just knowing the syntax, just knowing, okay, I need to put a semicolon, as you said, or a bracket here, that's one part. But I think learning to code is more so a logic and systems thinking type of skill. And that is a lot more fundamental. And I think that's something that can be used in a lot more than just superficial coding software. Even from hardware design, you have to still think about what part needs to achieve what function. And you can also apply that to almost any other subject, and it would help and benefit in result. For me, I'm actually interested in microbiology, so hopefully planning to go on a sort of medical route. And a lot of times people think of coding just as its own separate subject, that it's something that you learn separately. Oh, I'm learning to code, right? But just seeing in medical, there's a lot of different parallels to just, if I can approach a problem logically. Even the physician diagnosis sort of logic flow chart is something that we learned in our APCSA class. We learned about how to watch a function and how to determine what do I want to happen? And then how can I make that happen? So now instead of focusing on, oh, I didn't say the exact right characters to the coding program language, now it's just like, okay, maybe my logic itself is not the right part. So now we're not wasting time. I don't think learning to code is a waste of time, and I don't think syntax is a waste of time. But now we can focus a little more time on the underlying logical aspect. And that, I think, is very important. And similar to the personal finance, it's not just knowing, oh, here's a dollar, here's a tax rule. It's more so the underlying understanding of, here's something that earns value, and here's how I can make sure that I preserve that for the next generation or to save it for when I do need it. So I think this concept of coding has an underlying value of logic that is more important. And I think that for now, it'll be considered extracurricular, but hopefully it does find its way into a core curriculum of sorts.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're getting it. I think you guys have a good outlook and it really revolves around artificial intelligence. I was monkeying around trying to make a game for my phone, and you know, I'm long gone from coding things, right? Typing out lines of code, but I was able to make things happen just by working with AI, telling it what I want to do.
I'll be honest, Chris, I'm long gone from writing code too. Like we graduated maybe a year or two ago. I don't think I've written a line of code since, to be honest.
Yeah, and everybody's, you know, you're living, so that's exact proof that, you know, when Michael's out, nobody's gonna be writing code anymore, right? Or even before you get done with school. And so it becomes everyone can do it, right? Not everybody knew how to make a calculator.
True.
But everybody knows how to use one now, right? Mm-hmm. And so, you know, that's where I'm coming from, is that people are just going to use it, right? I need to figure out how to put a schematic together for a tractor that I could never do in my own free time, but there's now something that I can write modularly, logically, to make some computer figure that out.
Exactly.
And I think that's a, you know, that's people are afraid of AI or worried about it. That's the kind of stuff AI is going to start taking over for right?
Sure.
And it'll become, you know, everyone can use it. Farmers can use it. You know, teachers can use it. Bankers can use it. Everybody will start doing these little things. And I think that, you know, that's something that your academy sounds like you're in line with, right? Here's an easier way to figure out how to do that, where you don't have to know the guts.
True. I had something happen 2 days ago, Tara. It made me think of you. Very much this application, right? And Chris, now that you mentioned you're in hardware as well, right? It was one of my bosses had a pair of Nike shoes. They were like Bluetooth, so you could use an app on your phone. Very simple app, right? Control the colors for one of the buttons, and then tighten and loosen the laces. The app, I think, was taken off the App Store like 3 or 4 years ago, but the APK, the binary, was still online. So I downloaded that binary, put it in Claude Code of all things. And I was like, hey, like the code is here. It technically works. Can you reverse engineer it and make it work on my Mac so that I can connect to this pair of shoes? And it was like, okay, let's see what happens. It chugs away for like 2 hours, right? It goes through like all the cryptography, all of the keys, the private keys, the Bluetooth connection. Eventually it comes up with a thing that's like, well, with some input from the user, right? Like, hey, the first bit is stored on the shoes themselves. The second bit is the encryption key, right? So that's the thing that changes and is exchanged. There's a handshake. So there's a simple ACK flag and then a SYN flag. Once that's exchanged, the shoes will be connected. So we're like, okay, that's super cool. Like, let's clear the shoes, run the thing that Claude Code came up with some input on the cryptography side. And it worked. And so you're able to give hardware, something tangible, right? The shoes, to software, and say, hey, this is the goal that I wanted. And maybe this was a bit vibey, like a bit vibe coded. So not too much input from the user, not too much problem solving. But Tara, the part that made me think of you was like, hey, you know, let's say you have some really old piece of farm equipment, or in the future, you know, when all of our software gets much better, you're able to have AI surveillance systems on farms. If you have a tractor, like you mentioned, or maybe some other piece of hardware that needs to be upgraded, right? But all that firmware is written in C or some old outdated language. You put that into maybe some new system and have it figured out there. And I thought like that intersection was really, really exciting.
Absolutely.
I think that is going to be the future, and it's going to happen quickly because these AIs learn on themselves in exponential rates. So that's really something to watch. So I think that's coming. I think that's going to be a real good, that's going to be a career for people, right? A guy that goes around and helps farmers upgrade their old drone tech to better drone software, right?
Drone irrigation. Different. Oh yeah, they're monitoring and all those devices that they're constantly changing as it is, and so to get those updated. Now with the children that are on here, how does it work? How do they check themselves? Like if they just write something, they tell the computer to do it. How do we check that the kids aren't just using the AI and not putting their input in enough?
Of course. Michael, if you want to lead off a little bit on that first.
Okay.
I think it's a little bit more at home for you, right? At least building things.
So that's actually, it sort of reminds me in our high school, since, the advent of AI being used a lot in classwork has probably been around for a few years now.
Oh yeah.
And one thing that teachers what separated some of the teachers that just gave up completely on trying to check for AI versus the ones who knew how to work with it is you don't just take whether or not it works as a measure of success. Sometimes you have to let that student walk you through their thought process with their work. And that is sort of how you can check whether or not somebody gave it any thought at all and then used AI to catalyze their own thinking, or if somebody just had AI completely replace their thinking in the first place. So I'm thinking of the subject of English, since, hey, ChatGPT, write me an essay, is probably one of the more commonly used functions nowadays. So when it comes to code, of course, whether or not it works or not, that's one part of it. But whether or not the student can tell you, okay, here's my train of thought. I wanted this function to do this. And then if that didn't work, then I wanted to try some other route completely. Well, you can't understand that depth of knowledge if you didn't already had some forethought going into that code. So here in Gemstone, of course, we're going to have around 4 to 6 students paired with a mentor. And that mentor is the person who, of course, already has a background knowledge of coding. And he's the one, or she is the one, that will walk the students and have the student walk us through their thought process. And that is, of course, just one way of checking their understanding when it comes to something like building code or building software.
More on the enterprise side of things. So when you have, it's scary to think about having a machine think for you, right? Because that's very Terminator-esque. That's all like, we're losing our humanity. And so like Michael said, right, if the code works, cool. On the enterprise side, you have to consider scalability. Is it secure? Can people break into your server? Do you have a proper authentication methods, proper encryption methods built in? And a lot of that falls back on the design, first off. If you prompt the AI properly, let's say you give it 1,000 words of prompt rather than 100, and you say, you need to use these modules for the encryption, you need to use this IP for the server, and you need to add this firewall to it. That understanding from the student or the prompter in and of itself is a good indicator of where they stand, how much they've thought about the project, how much they have designed the project themselves, and what their level of understanding is. And really, we hope that by having the students paired in smaller groups with their mentors who do have that understanding, who went through the manual route of learning how to code and scale, that they're able to share that knowledge with each other and then use AI in a much safer way.
So you guys' attitude is really in line with the homeschool class of parents, I guess. We just had a gal that we talked to last time we did podcasts, and she fits right in with that, right? It's like this new way of thinking is going to stamp out these brick and mortar, right? 1 + 1 is 2.
Sure.
Factory workers. She used to say our education system was based to turn out factory workers and homemakers, and we're moving way beyond that at a rapid rate. You guys fit right in with that, right? If I'm a parent, that's my sweet spot, right? I want my kids to learn, but I want them to learn in this new way. where you're valued not just on an end result, but how you got there and why you got there. And that's what I'm hearing from you guys. It's more about the how and the why than just what I did, A, B, C, D, F, right?
Sure.
In your area, more than anywhere, that's becoming prevalent, right? Very rapidly. So you guys are falling into that.
Scarily fast. A new model every week, right?
And great.
Somebody writes something every other day.
And great, right? You're in step with that, getting our young men and women thinking along that way. You hear that in the news, winning the AI race. That's how it's done, right? Yeah. Is by having good people, good programs like you're developing, getting these kids going. And I'm with you. The sooner the better. If a little guy can make a man dance across the screen by doing some modular coding, that's cool, right? It's going to foster interest. I love it.
As long as they don't put all the thinking into the machine.
Right.
So where do you see this company in the next 5 years or in the future?
I think it's hard to say where we see AI, to be honest, in the next 5 years. I think one of the core values of Gemstone that the co-founders had decided on when we first started, and this was pre-AI, was that it really needed to be a reflection, one of how humans learn, right? That's a bit general, but one, how we as intelligent beings, right, process the world around us, and two, a reflection of how can we best use the tools we have available, right? Like if we have AI available to us, closing our eyes to it, pretending it doesn't exist and learning things the old way is, I think it's a scary approach. Things move very fast, like you said, Chris, right? And, if you close your eyes to AI for a couple of years, you could be left behind in the dust. At least that's the dark thinking. In terms of where the company will be, we really do hope that if AI is safe in 5 years, Tara, and it's still helpful for us to use it to code, to use it to build, then we'll be able to see kids taking an idea. Maybe they go online and they're like, hey, we see this website. It's an old website. It hasn't been updated in 5 years. But we have an idea of what the company does, and we see some really cool pictures, and we have an idea of what it should look like. Here's the colors that we think it looks nice. They can go onto Claude Code or Cursor or Windsurf, Codex, and in partnership with the AI. So not using the AI completely, not trusting it completely. The AI helping them and them prompting the AI, working together. They can rebuild a website like that in maybe half an hour. And so they're, as children, young adults, young minds, they're able to rebuild the world around them for how they think is better, how they think is more efficient, more sustainable. And I think that's where we'll sit in a couple of years, where even kids in grade school aren't able to do things like that if their mind is there.
I love the example of how you took something old school, real world, and made it, new or made it different anyway, usable.
The funny thing is that's one of the projects actually we have kids doing now. But yeah, the AI still takes a little bit of time to do it.
If folks want to get involved with Gemstone Academy, obviously you're reaching out to homeschools at conferences and different things. What's the best way to get linked up with you guys and become a part of your program?
Yeah, you guys can go give us a visit at www.gemstone.academy. That website will have the information, the contact, and then past there, shoot us an email. We're always very happy to talk to any folks who are interested, and especially those who are interested in building that world, safely with AI.
Now, are you all is this all solely a learn on your own pace kind of online experience? Is that how you function your courses or classes?
Sure. It's very customizable. So Michael, you had mentioned that, it's 4 to 6 students per class. That's the standard. We generally have about 5 students per class, per instructor. They work together as a group. So similar interests, similar learning paces. If a student wants to take it at a different pace, we have the instructors and the bandwidth very much so to accommodate them. If it's a one-on-one, what they're looking for, that's totally doable as well.
And you do most of them by Zoom in a format similar to this?
Largely online, yes. So anywhere in the world, wherever you're based. We have our students
Awesome.
and our instructors here.
That's awesome.
I think that's great. Yeah, great. What a great idea.
Of course, nobody wants to see their own student get replaced by a computer, but what's something that would be comforting and realistic, in your opinion, that you want to see from learners?
I think that if we increase critical thinking, I think critical thinking is something that sometimes, because we have so many things to teach them all at one time, it's a lot of information that they have to learn and then spew back out to us to do a test. But that critical thinking aspect sometimes gets lost in there. And I think that is where education needs to go. I think the kids need to think it through and have a cause and effect from their own that they can process.
I mean, even before old school coding, right? Writing code.
Yes. And I've done a little bit of coding back in high school.
Awesome.
I had a couple classes I taught. So I do understand where this progression is just amazing to me. I can't even fathom it. But you still have to have that critical thinking aspect. And that's what AI thinks a lot for you.
It really does. It really does. Yeah. I wanted to put something on the table more as a roundtable discussion. But I mean, in the spirit of Gemstone Academy being a little bit more academic focused, I think that's kind of our core. And then the agricultural spirit, right, of the Green Gene Foundation. I wanted to talk about maybe how AI and agriculture work together. Kind of your thoughts, our thoughts. Maybe we could just bounce off, like, vibe for a little bit on that.
So my thoughts on that, because I've thought some about it.
Awesome.
It to me, my first interest when AI first came out, I don't know, a year or two ago, was where a lot of people went, stock market, right?
Okay.
Predictability.
Yes.
That's huge in agriculture, right? When you get down to an actual farmer or rancher, if you could know what the weather is going to be like this next year, you could have a huge advantage over everybody else if you knew that information and no one else did, right? And there are things that have been around forever. The Farmer's Almanac, right? That
Yes.
if it's this. You read it and you plan for it. It's still a lot like the stock market. It may pan out, it may not. Now you've got something that can research 1 billion Farmer's Almanacs from going back to the 1800s and put something together. Much like you could research stock market conditions for the last 200 years or however long the stock market's been around. So to me, that is such a huge advantage in agriculture. If you could limit the guesswork from 50-50, to 70-30, or even better at some point, to tell someone the next 5 years you're gonna be in a drought, right? So, and then go back and research how things, who was successful in times of a 5-year drought and what did they do. To me, that is, the name of the game. If someone can come up with things that do that, and I think they will, or they probably already have to some extent.
Yeah,
that's huge. And it's all about data points, right? You used to be able to research, 100 data points and make it into a formula. Now you can get millions and billions of data points. Without the work, right? Things that would take you and I days, weeks, months, and years to compile. This crazy thing can go out and do it in minutes or hours, right? Yeah.
Actually, so Chris, I had worked briefly with agriculture before. It was a project with the Department of Energy. So for switchgrass, using that for fuel, like plants for biofuels. And I remember one of the thoughts that I had at the very beginning of the project was, so they were using things like that. It was hundreds of data points on the hyperspectral band. They used a drone, flew it around with a super special camera, and scanned a field. And they were able to detect things like how the chlorophyll was doing, how healthy was it, whether or not there was Lyme disease or rust disease on the leaves based on not just RGB, but the bands above and below that.
Okay.
And the thing for me was, before walking into the project, I would never have even thought to look at those data points. Just as I think right now, I would never have thought to look at other farms and how they responded to a drought, if the prediction was that there was a drought in 5 years. And kind of, so my question to you here is, how can we teach kids to be aware of things like that, right? They can use AI if they know what to prompt the AI for. But if they never even have the basis of, hey, I need to look for drought patterns, I need to look for farms in certain conditions, they can't use the AI for that. And so how do they, build that kind of awareness in agriculture or in sustainability in the environment?
I'm gonna put Tara on the spot because
Okay.
that's where Green Gene comes in, right? We're trying to figure that out. We're trying to solve that problem. So what do you think, Tara? What's the best way to get kids really deep thinking into that at a young
I
age?
think, just starting them out young with the very basic things about regenerative ideas. We don't just want to do it the way our grandfathers and grandfathers and grandfathers did it because that was so elementary. We have AI now to help with all the regenerative practices we're revisiting. So we want to do it and teach it and explore the different areas of that regenerative farming with the AI techniques now. So I do know that like monitoring and they do soil monitoring, they do oxygen. I've been learning a lot about soil and health of the soil, and you can always, there's so many different ways to do it, but there's AI now to teach us how to do it.
Right.
It doesn't mean that we're going to add all these chemicals to it, but if you do different things at different times, different temperatures, all those things come into play, and the AI can help make sure you're set up for success in that way, doing them at the right time.
For sure. Yeah. And the ability, like you said, for it to teach, you prompt it for one or two things and it says, hey, here are the answers to those things. Here's the network or the web of knowledge around it, right? I think the ability for AI to do that is really helpful now too.
I agree.
Yeah.
And here's what I like coming from, and this is higher education, but it could be applied even to high school, grade school.
Awesome.
You guys
Yeah.
coming from a college, right? So we all know college typically have some sort of research project if you're in the science, background or thesis if you're, educational background.
Right.
But think about a senior in college or a junior senior in college spend a year doing some research on whatever, let's say growing soybeans, right?
Okay.
And you do your thing and you do some research and you experimenting, and after a year's time maybe you have some good results, maybe it was a flop, but that was the whole point, right? You did this thing to see how it went.
Right.
Now you've got the ability for students to do something like that in a matter of a day or a week.
Exactly.
Right? Because AI can crank through that so much faster and better. So, maybe someone thinks putting toothpaste on soybeans makes it grow better, and there's no shot that is. But
Sure.
you could run that in a week, and it could tell you bad idea, right? So you didn't spend a year doing a bad idea. Now you can do all kinds of crazy good or bad ideas, and who knows, maybe after toothpaste you try baking soda and that actually worked, right? You would have never got to that because you were stuck on toothpaste. So I love the fact that it can accelerate that, and that was my answer to what kids should be focused on with AI learning: creativity. Right now it's not so much that making a mistake is a learning experience, but making a mistake is the way to get there.
Exactly.
And I love that. Right. So I like that to say, it's almost like magic, right? You can put whatever you want in this machine and see what comes out.
Right.
And it's almost like the next step, right? You're not just teaching someone what is true. You're asking them to figure out what could be true.
Yeah.
That hasn't been thought of yet, right? Everyone knows what 2 + 2 is, but
exactly.
Maybe
exploring the world. Yeah.
That isn't 1 through 10. Maybe there's a different number out there that no one's ever thought about. And you have this power to try.
I really like, you said the word accelerate. I really like the way that I think points to how AI can be used too. AI can think, maybe, sure. I don't know if I would call it personally thinking, but it's able to return a lot of knowledge to us. What it's really good at is churning through a lot of data. Like you said, right? It can go through like 1 billion farms in a day. And for us being able to explore the world, it's like running through Minecraft, but you're able to run like at the speed of light, rather than the speed at however Steve can move. Is Steve the character still, Michael?
Yeah.
Of the block guy? Okay. Right, you can explore things so much faster now. And so, like, yeah, if there's another number out there, it's not a, hey, I need to get a PhD in math so that I can start exploring. It's, I have this idea. Let me interact with AI. Let me see what it can give me, right? Put the idea into the machine and see what comes out. And then once I have that knowledge, just start exploring around that. I think that's the most exciting thing. Yeah, spot on.
And the effort, right? It's not the effort to come up with the idea is still yours and your human thought. But I think of like on the Big Bang Theory with the chalkboards of a million physics equations across the chalkboard, and just how, I'm not gonna say exhausting, but mentally, straining it is to literally pace through that. Now you don't have to do that. You have a Coke, right? Let the computer do all that crazy formula stuff.
Exactly.
And so now you're ready to go do the next thing, right? And the computer never gets tired. It's just like, give me more. I'll do this all day. And so I think if people start looking at it that way, to use, it's just like when we used to plow with a horse, right? And then someone invented a tractor, and you're like, oh, this is way better, right?
Yeah.
It takes down my time, and it makes it a lot easier, and saves money. That's all this is the next kind of progression to make things better, for easier, better, and the people aren't going to get phased out. They're just going to do it better. That's the way I see AI. It's going to make you much more efficient and much more better at what you do, and maybe less stressful, right? The bean counters don't have to count the beans all day. They can have a computer, you can have the AI count the beans, and you can figure out what to do with the beans once it counts them.
Yeah, and that's what we're good at as people. I don't think we should be spending our time on the grunt work like counting, right? We should be spending our ideas, right, our mind power on the higher level things.
And to me, it sounds like that's what your academy is ultimately came about, right? There is this underlying work. It's there. We need to know it and worry about it, but at the same time, let's move beyond it.
Right, the accelerator.
Let's accelerate.
Yeah.
Great concept. Really good concept. And I think that when you come at it with that approach, it eases people's minds. Like, it's not just giving my kid a computer and he doesn't have to think anymore.
Yeah.
Right. This is going to solve all the problems. It's not. We still want that critical thinking.
Exactly. Right. That the ideation, Chris, like you said, right?
I think of AI, and of course, not just generative AI, but machine learning and the other variants of it. I think of them not as a replacement, but rather as a catalyst that allows something that otherwise wouldn't have been possible because the activation energy barrier is just too high. It makes it so that it's achievable now. And a reaction that otherwise wouldn't have occurred, a project that a kid would otherwise not have built, or a connection that they otherwise wouldn't have learned, is now something that is doable because the most basest part, the syntax, or the error message that you keep getting because you added an extra space, that is no longer what's in your way. All that's in your way now is just your own logic and your own thinking. And that, I think, is very important.
Excellent.
Nice. And I think I would encourage anybody listening to go and interact with AI. Tara, very much like what you said, continue thinking critically, continue analyzing the world around yourself. But at the same time, put that idea through the machine, like you said, Chris. See what comes out. It's probably a new idea because you came up with it. And then, see whatever AI says and go act on that. Think on that critically again, and just continue that feedback loop.
Awesome. Well, so personally, I'm blown away. You two are very young men, but very wise, very, very experienced, and very knowledgeable for your age. So a way to go. I hope you keep going. I see you guys as having bright futures.
Cheers. It's exciting.
Yeah, I'm very excited for you. So that's about all the time we have for today's podcast.
Perfect.
Thanks for listening to Modern Farming. Be sure to follow us and share, and join us again as we grow knowledge about the world that feeds us.